Hey everyone, Brian Zane with the inaugural edition of the Raw Review. And yes, it took me about 2 hours to come up with that name. No more Who Wore It Better. I'm not having Raw and SmackDown compete anymore. I'm leaving that for NXT and AEW with Wednesday Warfare coming out later this week. There's a lot of changes with the channel this week, folks. The wrestling landscape has changed, and so therefore I must change my release schedule. I put this up on social media this morning, but you can look at that right now. Things are changing. Tuesdays, you get the Raw Review. Wednesdays, the old Thursday episodes, the long forms and the classic pay-per-view reviews, those have been bumped up to Wednesdays to accommodate for Wednesday Warfare, which is coming out on Thursday. I know, it's kind of confusing as it is. Then Friday is going to be the day of my weekly video game live streams, and Saturday will be the SmackDown review, which is going to be hosted by the newest member of the Wregret team. Her name's Alex, better known as Queen of the Ring on YouTube. She's got her own channel. She is a very passionate, knowledgeable wrestling fan. She knows exactly what she's talking about when it comes to the squared circle, and I'm very excited to have her on board and for her to be giving her thoughts on SmackDown each and every weekend with the SmackDown review. And yes, that also took a long time for me to come up with a name for that segment. But yeah, if you want to show her some love, you can check out our YouTube channel. I got it linked right here in the corner, and her social media is right here on the bottom of the screen. And one last thing I want to say here before we get into the official Raw review. Some of you might have noticed this past weekend was Ring of Honor's Death Before Dishonor pay-per-view, and you might have seen me in a couple shots on that. I was part of the pre-show interviewing the bouncers, and I also appeared on the hard cam a couple times, and I was nearly had Matt Taven suplexed on me as I was sitting at ringside as the show was going on. But it was a very fun weekend. I have more. I'll talk about it in more detail in a vlog I have coming out later this week, so you can all see what happened there. But it was a really cool experience to be part of that weekend, and I certainly hope more work with them is coming down the pike very soon, but nothing official right now. But enough about all that. Let's dive right into the season premiere of Monday Night Raw taking place in Phoenix, Arizona this past Monday, and boy, they went whole hog with the newness of all this. Not only was there a new song for the cold open, the whole Then Now Forever, there was a new intro, there's Pyro, it's back in a big way, there's a new set, the half pipe, new announce team. I cannot handle all this change. It's all hitting you at once. I love seeing Vic Joseph on Raw. I love his work. Dio Madden, I haven't heard enough of his stuff to really form an opinion on him. Jerry Lawler, I have heard enough of his stuff in the last few years to think, I don't think he really belongs there anymore. I think babyface Jerry Lawler, when he was doing that on the regular, didn't care for it, and now that he's so far removed from it, and he's coming back doing that, I think that spot should really go to somebody else, like anybody else but Jerry Lawler at this point, but we'll see how he does. The show officially begins with Rey Mysterio making his way to the ring. He's wearing a sweet purple mask and a badass chalkline jacket that commemorates his match with Eddie Guerrero from Halloween Havoc 1997. He's cutting a promo saying, tonight's match he's going to dedicate to his son Dominic, who if it weren't for him, he wouldn't even be in this position right now. All of a sudden, Brock Lesnar appears, and he also has Pyro. One thing I will say about the new half-pipe set is that, not for everybody, but for a lot of people, I think the intros and the graphics they have for them can be pretty cool. Like Brock's the perimeter of the whole LED stage has the line of fire around it, which is a really cool look, I think. But Brock comes out, he snatches the microphone from Rey's hands, gives it to Heyman. Paul Heyman starts talking, Rey snatches the microphone right back from him. He gets maybe 2 words in, and then Lesnar's F5s the bejesus out of Mysterio, hits him twice with it, and then he looks at Dominic, who's sitting in the front row, he heaves him over the barricade and starts beating the bejesus out of him too. He drives him into the corner post, a huge German suplex. He's bumping his ass off. Dominic he's a natural talent in terms of selling. He gets beat up a lot too. Brock's just beating both Mysterios up. He keeps leaving the ring, coming back to do more damage, and Heyman's trying to tell him to stop and everything. Finally he does. And my favorite part about this though is Jerry Lawler's going, he's a teenager. He's 22. He's not a teenager, Jerry. I thought it was a really strong opener. I think it made Brock look like an absolute killer going into his match with Kofi Kingston on Friday. It does make the announced Universal title match they had all week between Rey and Seth Rollins to be a big bait and switch, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But I did like the fact, Rey, the way he's excelling, and he's cradling Dominic, he's over him, looks so remorseful, and just like he's racked with grief over the fact his son was just brutalized by Lesnar the whole time. Later in the night, you'll see a clip of them going into the ambulance together, and you even see this very emotional, very raw-looking moment, pardon the pun, where Rey takes his mask off in the ambulance. He's his head is in his hands. That was really good emotion on display by Rey for the evening. Really good. A very strong angle here. Our first match tonight sees Sasha Banks taking on Alexa Bliss, who also gets Pyro tonight. It's a follow-up to last week when Sasha beat Nikki Cross and then put a bit of hurting on Alexa after the match was officially over. It's weird. It's hard getting used to a Monday Night Raw where Sasha Banks makes her way up to the ring and Michael Cole's not there to yell, "It's boss time." Before the match begins, Becky Lynch appears. She gets her steam back at her entrance, and she joins the announce team there. She immediately stands up at the announce table, and for the duration of the match, puts on like an ungodly amount of wrist tape. And the whole time, Jerry's like, "No, Becky, you promised me you weren't going to interfere in the match." Like, we're 2 segments in, and Jerry Lawler's the biggest fucking lifeguard. First, he's like, he's crying over Dominic getting beat up, which, that's more understandable. But then he's like, "No, Becky, don't get into the ring." It's like, why do you care? We get the Scott Steiner siren for a few seconds in the middle of the match, apropos of nothing, and it just goes away, and it's never acknowledged or brought up or anything by the announce team. But Lawler at one point like whispers, I've been told that Brock's talking to the authorities." Like, why are you whispering, Jerry? Sasha cheats to win a pretty short and disappointing match. I was kind of hoping, for one they built up all week, I was kind of hoping for more impact from there. Becky gets down to the ring after the bell rings, and they scrap for a bit. Sasha runs off. Becky cutting a promo saying you'll have nowhere to run at Hell in a Cell. The man comes around, there's retribution to be had and all that stuff. And so that's, I think the build to this is okay for the women's match, but I am just not digging Jerry Lawler on commentary, and we've got, a couple hours left. They recap Bray Wyatt's actions from last week on Raw. Then backstage, Charlie Caruso interviews Seth Rollins. Seth condemns Brock's actions from earlier in the night, and he says he will survive and prevail somehow at Hell in a Cell. He says that Rey Mysterio is owed a title match somewhere down the line, so they seem to be putting that in the back burner. But he says right now he has no challenger, so he's going to put it out there for anyone to challenge him for that title later in the night. So we'll see where that goes. Your next match sees Rudolph defending the Raw Tag titles against Heavy Machinery. They say, "Oh, Heavy Machinery have earned a shot for the Raw Tag titles." How? Can you explain that? They're a SmackDown team. And be that as it may, it's a really entertaining matchup. I think both teams get over here, especially Heavy Machinery, looking good for the most part. Ultimately, Rude hits the glorious DDT on Tucker after he and Dolph eliminate Otis from the ring to win and retain. So, pretty good match. Up next, Miz TV with special guests Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair. Miz gets the sparkly shower for his entrance, too. They're just like going whole hog with Pyro this week, folks. Flair is introduced as a 16-time world champion, even though the Titantron behind him says 17-time for some reason. Flair just keeps starting shit with Hogan when they're both in the ring there, and they're teasing they're about to fight, and then there's like shake hands, like, "Oh, it's all cool. We gotta get one more match chant," which like, no! Hogan says, "Well, brother, we're not spring chickens anymore, but we can add one more page to the history books." So then Miz announces on their behalf that there's going to be a 5-on-5 tag team match at the end of the month at Crown Jewel between Team Hogan and Team Flair. So they're going to be the mascots, or I guess the leaders of their respective teams, with the team captain and 4 of the wrestlers. So Seth Rollins comes out first as the captain of Team Hogan, and he's marking out over being affiliated with Hogan. Randy Orton is announced as the captain of Team Flair. That makes sense. They have the history together as being part of Evolution together. And then Orton tells Rollins to get out of Hogan's ass for a second, challenges him to a captain's match on the spot. But before they start wrestling, King Corbin appears. He starts beating down Seth, and while he and Orton beat down Seth together, then Rusev appears to even the odds. So it seems that you're going to have Rusev and you're going to have Corbin on Team Hogan and Flair respectively as well. Rusev and Rollins pose on stage with Hogan to end the segment. By the way, Jimmy Hart was there too. First off, we already saw this match in TNA many years ago, a Team Hogan versus a Team Flair. Second of all, I don't know how I feel about Corbin being involved in this thing, because when he just shows up in the wrestler gumbo that we're seeing here, I think it immediately diminishes the impact that he just got from winning King of the Ring. The fact that he's a king, yet he's not the captain of Team Flair, I think that's a huge missed opportunity. Backstage, Rusev gets interviewed. Charlie Caruso asks, "Where's Lana?" Rusev is silent, but he does say that Seth owes him a favor after what happened earlier, so he's going to challenge him for the Universal title later tonight. A lot of questions surrounding what's going on with Rusev's character at the moment since his return, but I'm excited for that match later on. We get another promo of the AOP in suits, talking about how much they like violence and how AOP is violence. We then see the Viking Raiders taking on the OC once again. It's a rematch from last week, and second verse, same as the first. It's a solid match. The Viking Raiders actually win here. They have 2 wins in a row now against Anderson and Gallows. Backstage, Cesaro breaks the norm and says he's glad that Brock Lesnar beat up the Mysterios earlier in the night, though he is upset that he didn't get a chance to beat up Dominic first. He's still in that kick for some reason. Ricochet shows up and tries to defend the Mysterios' honor, and they agree to have an impromptu match. So after the break, we have that match, and no, last time you saw Cesaro, that was not an aberration, it was not an anomaly. Cesaro is just really into capri pants right now. That's what he wrestles in. It's a pretty short and sweet match. Ricochet wins on on a West Coast pop in honor of Rey Mysterio. Kind of disappointed we didn't see much more from them in terms of action. I think on paper they could have a great match, but something tells me it's not the last we'll see these guys in the future. It's time for another Firefly Funhouse. This week, all the puppet friends are scared of what's going to happen at Hell in a Cell. Rambling Rabbit is literally scared to death. He just keels over, and then Bray just kind of laughs it off. Bray describes the horror of what the Hell in a Cell match means and says the Fiend can't wait to put hurting on Seth Rollins. AJ Styles defends the U.S. title against Cedric Alexander once again. It's a good match, much better than their match at Clash of Champions, though it's not saying much. Ultimately, AJ wins with the Styles Clash, clean as a whistle once again. So I know there's conflicting reports of, oh, Cedric is buried, but the fact he's still on TV and still is able to fight and be somewhat competitive with AJ, I wouldn't call it a burial, but the fact that it's been such a lopsided feud between these two really, makes, well, what's the end game? What's the point of putting Cedric on that pedestal? And the fact he beat AJ, Madison Square Garden a few weeks ago, and they're just kind of like doing, what is the point? How is this building Cedric as someone you can like root for and cheer on even after this feud with AJ? The Street Profits are backstage. They're hyping up their tag title match, the Undisputed Era, this Wednesday on NXT, and they do some more exposition about Raw itself. Lawler, after the segment, Lawler says they're getting paid by the word, which is the funniest thing he said all night. Lacey Evans takes on Natalya up next, and say what you will about these ladies, but I've really enjoyed the build they've had for this little rivalry, because they had 2 matches back-to-back, they traded wins, and then for a few weeks they were building Lacey up where she was beating other ladies with the sharpshooter. Not always the best-looking sharpshooter, but sharpshooters nonetheless. It's a solid match, but it's not very long. Lacey rakes the eyes and rolls Natalya up and grabs the tights, kind of, in order to win the match dirty. Then she hits Natalya with the women's right after the match is over, so pretty decisive way to end this feud, I would think, and so we'll see what happens with Lacey going forward from here. Backstage, Paul Heyman admits that Brock's actions were wanton and reckless, and Paul apologizes for that, but that the blame should be at the feet of Vince McMahon for allowing Brock to show up when he is in fight mode. Cuts a pretty good promo, basically saying that Brock's going to destroy Kofi Kingston on Friday and become the new WWE Champion. We then go elsewhere backstage where Maria Kanellis is being interviewed, like what's going on with Rusev, and she says, well, obviously Rusev's not the father, and then she walks off. Sasha Banks then storms the place, and then she wants an interview time as well. She basically says that she's going to make Becky Lynch tap out at Hell in a Cell. We see a mysterious limo pull up backstage. Then it's time for the main event, Universal title match as Seth Rollins defends against Rusev. As Seth is making his entrance, we already see Randy Orton and King Corbin just chilling on stage with Corbin's throne toppled over. What the hell happened in the interim? In the middle of the match, Bobby Lashley appears. He interrupts the proceedings and brings out Lana, Rusev's wife, and then Lashley and Lana, they hug and then they kiss. Then they kiss a lot. They are really going for it here. All of a sudden we have 2 concurrent cuckold angles on Raw. What the hell's happening? The lights cut out. It's Fiend time, baby. The Fiend shows up and he mandibles Seth Rollins to end the show as it cuts to black. What is going on? Well, since I'm no longer comparing these shows, how the hell am I going to rate Raw every week? I guess I'll just do the letter grade like I do with the pay-per-views and stuff. I'm going to give this one a C+. I think there's a lot of interesting things happening on this season premiere of Raw. There's a lot of stuff going on. Not only do we have all this change and all this new stuff aesthetically that I'm really a fan of, except maybe for the commentary team, there's also really interesting storylines going on. Like, I'm really curious. I'm going to give the Lana, Rusev, and Lashley angle some time to marinate and see where it goes before I really make a judgment on it. But I do like the fact we had a lot of shit going on as far as like Brock coming in and crashing Rey Mysterio's speech and the stuff at the end with like the Fiend and then Lashley and Lana and everything. I've always said that I've enjoyed unpredictability in my wrestling shows. So I appreciate what they did here, trying to make things unpredictable. But I think, like I said, I don't care for the announce team right now. I like a couple members of it, but right now Jerry Lawler is the weak link in my opinion. I think the whole Miz TV thing felt like a giant clusterfuck, just like with Hogan and Flair trying to talk over each other, and just like it seemed very disorganized. And then all the wrestlers coming in, all this thing just to set up a match for Crown Jewel, which now I don't care about because it's happening like the Crown Jewel stuff. Though I did enjoy a lot of the chaos on this show, there was a lot of sameness on this episode as well. A lot of rematches. There was Viking Raiders and OC, there was Lacey and Natalya, there was AJ and Cedric. A lot of matches that did not really need rematches, especially again in the case of Cedric and AJ, things are so one-sided on that feud. Did you really need that match to happen there? And I get this is probably kind of like they're trying to tie up a couple angles before things get reset on the draft next week. But I just some of the matches didn't really do it for me for a lot of reasons. A lot of short matches, didn't really get to see a lot of people people get to shine in kind of ways I would hope. Like Sasha and Alexa I thought was kind of a letdown. Ricochet and Cesaro was a letdown as well, but I'm kind of hoping that maybe they build on that at some point. You know, there was some good, but there was also some not so good here, which is why I'm going to give it kind of like a C+. Like there's promise. I'm really optimistic, but I can't really say this was an amazing show. But what did you think of the season premiere of Raw? Let me know in the comment section below, and be sure to give it a letter grade by going to the iCard in the corner of your screen. Now, I know I just said at the top of this review that there's going to be a new weekly schedule and all that, but bear with me, because there will probably not be a Raw review next week. And the reason for that is I'm going to be on vacation all next week. I promise you will get a Hell in a Cell review on Monday morning, basically to choose between reviewing Raw or doing Wednesday Warfare, and I'm going to lean more toward Wednesday Warfare. So I apologize that we're debuting this new segment this week and then it's not going to be there next week, but the following week the schedule will return to normal. I apologize for that inconvenience, but you will still see Alex give the SmackDown review next weekend as well as this weekend too. So be on the lookout for her reviews for SmackDown in the weeks to come. And again, show her some love, check her out on social media and on her YouTube channel. Until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.